Alright, so looking at number 8 on worksheet 3, secant squared minus 2 tangent squared x equals 0. I can't really work this with secant squared and tangent squared in there, but I know there's a identity that relates the two of them, and I don't remember what it is. I do know that sine squared plus cosine squared is 1, and to get tangent out of there, I should divide by cosine squared. Again, maybe you have this one memorized, but I figure it out every time because it doesn't take long. So secant squared minus 2 tangent squared. I guess I have a choice here. I can replace secant squared with tangent squared plus 1, or I could replace tangent squared with secant squared minus 1. I think the easier one would be to replace secant squared because it's already solved for, and there's not a negative or a 2 out in front. So it's probably easiest to just replace secant squared with tangent squared x plus 1. Let's combine like terms, and I get negative tangent squared x plus 1 equals 0. Let's see, we've usually been factoring these. So I can factor it, or I can move the 1 over. Well, either way, let's multiply by negative 1, get rid of the negative there. Tangent squared x minus 1 equals 0. Now I have two options. I can factor that, or I can move the 1 over and square root both sides. Either way, I'm going to get plus or minus 1, so it doesn't really matter. I guess we have been factoring with this worksheet, so let's stick with that. Tangent x plus 1, tangent x minus 1. I'm out of room here. So that means tangent of x equals negative 1, or tangent of x equals positive 1. So if tangent is negative 1, that happens at, let's see, negative pi over 4, or 3 pi over 4. And then tangent of x equals 1, that would be at pi over 4. So there's my two sets of answers. So really at any over 4 is going to work for that problem. What else? What other questions do you have from this worksheet? Let's do at least one more from worksheet 3. Number 9. Yeah, 9's a good pick. It has the same issue with tangent squared and secant squared. Let's see, we already worked that one, or that identity anyway. Tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared. Now this one, I do not have a choice on who I want to substitute that in for. Like, there's no doubter. I have to. Which one do I need to replace, tangent or secant? Secant. I've got to replace secant. So in place of secant goes tangent squared x plus 1. But I need to be super careful because there's a minus sign out front of that needs to go to everything. Alright, so let's, how much do I want to do at once? This is a negative tangent squared. If I add it to the other side, it gets me to 3 tangent squared x plus tangent of x. And then this is 5 minus 1, so that's 4, but then I move it over and it becomes minus 4. So a couple of algebra steps in one there, trying to save space. Now it's a factoring problem. It's got to be 3 tan x and tan x. The signs need to be different to get to a negative 4, and they need to add to a positive 1. And I'm switching to a pencil because it's guess and check time now. I can be smart about this, though. If I put a 4 across from the 3, that's going to get me 12. That's way too big, so that's out. So I'm not going to put a 4 there. I could put a 1 there, and a 4 here, and that would get me 4 and 3. Oh, I think I'm onto this here because I want a positive tangent x. I want a plus 4 and a minus 1. That would multiply to negative 4, and it would add to a positive 1. So I guess I sort of guessed it right the first. No, that's not true because I tried the 4 there. So I set both of those equal to 0. That's a step that you might not show. You might not have to show that to get to tangent of x equals negative 4/3. Tangent of x minus 1 equals 0. So tangent of x equals 1. All right, I like this problem. I'm glad you picked it because part of it needs a calculator, part of it doesn't need a calculator. So, well, let's keep going. So for the calculator part, so this would have to be on the no calculator part of the exam. Inverse tangent of negative 4/3. So that's just from the calculator. Negative 0.927 plus pi k. That's part of my answer. And then tangent of x equals 1. That's on the unit circle, so I'm not going to use the calculator for that one. Tangent of x equals 1 in the first quadrant at pi over 4. Pi over 4 plus pi k. Alright, so if or when this one like this shows up on the calculator part of the test, you got to use your calculator for this answer. If you use your calculator for this answer, inverse tangent of 1, and write that as your answer, I'm going to take off a point because the directions are going to say something like use exact values when possible. And so the best answer would be pi over 4. If you write 0.785, you're not wrong, but you're not as precise as pi over 4. So you're going to have to be careful on the calculator section. It could still have unit circle type answers on there, and we'll expect you to use unit circle when possible. If there's not a nice unit circle thing on there, then you have to use your calculator. This is a side note trick that might help if you're not sure and you do it in the calculator anyway. You could divide by pi to see if it gets you something nice. So if you did that and then you divided by pi, then you'd realize, wait a minute, that means my answer was pi over 4. But if you can think through all of that, then you probably already knew that the answer was pi over 4.